Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everybody. Confirmation hearing and continuation of the joint oversight hearing of the 38th Guam Legislature is now called to order. It is now 2:04 p.m. This hearing is a continuation of the proceedings held on Thursday, December 11th, 2025. This afternoon's proceedings are being held by the Committee on Transportation, Tourism, Customs, Utilities, Federal and Foreign Affairs, in collaboration with the Committee on Land, Environment, Housing, Agriculture, Parks and Infrastructure, and the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs for joint oversight portion of this hearing. In accordance with the 38th Guam Legislative Standing Rules and Guam's Open Government Law, public notice for today's hearing was duly disseminated. The first notice was issued on December 29, 2025, and the second notice was issued on January 5th, 2026. A live stream of this hearing is being broadcast on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel, and a transcript of the proceedings will be filed with the Committee on Rules and made available to the public. Before we proceed, I would like to recognize my colleagues joining me today, this afternoon. Start, of course, with the Chair and the Vice Speaker, Chair of the Committee on Land, Environment, Housing, Agricultural, Parks, and Infrastructure, Vice Speaker Tony Atta. Thank you for joining us, of course.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and again, in collaboration with the Chairperson on Health, Veterans, and Veterans Affairs, Senator Sabrina Salas-Matanay. Thank you for joining us, Senator Bree, and also Senator Joseph Augustine and Senator Sean Gumatao. Thank you for being here this afternoon with us this afternoon. I want to also remind everyone present of the Institute on Guam's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name and any organization or capacity in which they are testifying for the record. All questions and testimonies must remain relevant to today's agenda, and I ask that all participants maintain proper decorum throughout the proceedings. We'll now move to our first order of business, an update on the scheduled confirmation hearing. The committee was scheduled to consider the appointment identified as document number 38GL-25-1485, the appointment of Mr. John T. Cruz as a member of the Guam Regional Transit Authority Board of Directors. However, once again, at the request of the Guam Regional Transit Authority, GRTA, on behalf of Mr. John Cruz, we will need to postpone the confirmation hearing on this appointment. We wish Mr. John Cruz a swift recovery. That being no further action on this appointment, at this time, the confirmation is continued to a further date, and that will be on February 23rd, 2026 at 9 a.m. Again, the confirmation hearing is moved for Mr. John Cruz from GRTA, February 23rd, 2026, 9 a.m. for confirmation of John Cruz, okay? We will now transition into the continuation of our joint oversight hearing on the presence of Dieldrin in Guam's water system. The joint hearing again, contamination in Guam's water system, continuation of oversight initiated October 24th, 2025. Once again, good afternoon, everyone that's joining us today here at the People's House. Thank you for joining us, and we continue this joint oversight hearing on the presence of Dieldrin in Guam's water system. I want to begin by saying that I sincerely hope this will be the last continuation of this joint oversight hearing, and that after today we can shift from continuations to sustained coordinated action. This hearing is a continuation of the proceedings last convened on Thursday, December 11th, 2025, and of the first joint oversight hearing held on Friday, October 24th, or December 11th, 2025, and the first oversight, of course, October 24th, 2025. Across our island, our people, parents, grandparents, workers, and business owners all are asking the same fundamental questions. Is our water safe to drink? When our community learned that their water was not safe and that it may not have been safe for some time, it caused real alarm. People deserve answers, but just as importantly, they deserve timely, clear notice and a coordinated response when public health is at risk. At our last hearing, the primary focus was on water quality and regulatory response. Today, I want to continue moving forward toward the bigger question of prevention and coordination, how we can identify sources, how agencies communicate with each other and with the public, and how to ensure we never repeat the same breakdown. For that reason, we have continued to call on our relevant agencies to join us in this oversight. Their expertise and historical perspective are critical and crucial in helping us understand, first, how we can strengthen interagency coordination, including clear roles, points of contact, and shared protocols during a contamination event. Two, how the public is notified, how quickly that happens, and how we can ensure notices are accurate, consistent, and accessible to residents and businesses. And three, what we know about potential source areas, historical land use, and the steps being taken to identify and address legacy contaminations. And last but not least, what long-term safeguards, enforcement mechanisms, and education efforts are needed to protect our groundwater and our drinking water. And as we continue this joint oversight hearing, these questions before us remain serious. What is being done right now to mitigate impacts, support affected families and businesses, and restore public confidence? And most importantly, what long-term prevention steps are being put in place so that our water remains safe for the next generation? We will now proceed to hear from our agencies. We have invited, of course, the following agencies to provide testimony and answer questions this afternoon: Guam Waterworks Authority, GWA, Guam Environmental Protection Agency, GEPA, Guam Department of Agriculture, the Department of Public Health and Social Services. For the record, all agencies were notified by the committee of today's hearing. At the same time, I'd like to call forward our representatives from these agencies. Please step forward. You did already? Yeah, do it again. Yeah, do it again. Remind him. Yeah, there might be something. We're waiting for that? Okay, okay. Sergeant Arms. At this point, before we begin with the testimony and presentation, if I can have the Sergeant Arms please swear in all agency representatives that will be testifying.
If you can please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant. We'll begin with updates from GWA and then GEPA. So with GWA, go ahead, please identify yourselves again and yeah, represent.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Brett Raley. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Engineering at GWA. I'm not sure the slides were transmitted in time to get put up on the screen. All right. I'm just going to go through the hard copy printout that I have then. So the progress and updates between December 11 and January 7, 2026. GWA submitted comments on GEPA's updated risk assessment document for the Dieldrin interim action level. Regarding the point of entry, point of use household treatment systems, the Attorney General returned the procurement review on December 15th, and we have proceeded to award a contract to begin those installations. As of January 5th, there were 313 households that had requested applications or submitted applications for the POE systems. GWA has continued monitoring Y15 and the other wells on a monthly basis, and since the installation of the interim treatment system, the water entering the distribution system has been non-detect for Dieldrin at Y15. GWA is also monitoring the other wells that exceed 50% of the IAL. M2 remains online, and the December 18 test results is 0.12 part per billion. D18 remains online, and its December 18 testing results is 0.12 part per billion. M3 continues to be used intermittently as needed, and its December 18 test result was 0.19 ppb. EX11 remains online. Its 2018 test result was 0.14 ppb. M4 has been offline since 10/3/2025. And the test results from December 18 was 0.14 ppb. D17 has been offline since July 31st of 2025, and its test results from December 18 were 0.08 ppb. A23 and A25 wells have been offline since 2016. So those are the wells that are exceeding half of the IAL value. For an update on the installation of the permanent treatment systems, I believe it was reported in the last hearing that the permanent vessels for Y15 have arrived. They're in the contractor's yard at present while we prepare to construct the pad at Y15. There's also some work being prepared to start at M4. And the contractor has cleaned and is preparing to relocate the vessels from well A8 In addition to the vessels arriving on island, the media has also arrived for the permanent Y-15 installation. So work is progressing toward getting the permanent installations in place.
Is that it?
Pardon?
Is that it?
Yep, that's it. We will make sure these slides get to you because they've got some
I appreciate that. Okay.
photos showing the site conditions.
So the completion date, is that still on schedule for the installations of the filtration system?
The contractual completion date is still summer of
26.
2026.
Yeah.
We do expect the contractor to be able to finish the Y-15 installation ahead of that deadline. I think it was reported in the last meeting that we were trying to get that done by the end of the first quarter. And
So March. Okay.
it looks like that might still happen, or it might slip into early second quarter for the permanent system.
Okay, so when we're looking at summer 2026, June, July, August, something like that?
I don't recall the contract completion date, but it's summer
around that time.
2026, and that's for all three sites for
Okay.
D17, M4, and Y15.
Okay. And in the meantime, the detection level in regards to Dieldrin in the water is at the, I guess, is it acceptable rate at this point, or safer?
Wells M4
Yeah.
and D17 are turned off,
Okay.
and well Y15, which is the site with the interim treatment system, has been non-detect for Dieldrin since
Okay.
the interim system went
Okay.
online.
Have we gotten any closer to detecting again the culprit of this whole thing, or I mean the source?
Well, I'm going to defer to Guam EPA for that. That's really their area of expertise.
And we'll get EPA to next to make the presentation. Okay. Okay. EPA.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Speaker, Honorable Senators. Thank you for having us. My name is Michelle Lastimoza. I'm the administrator for Guam EPA. And for today's presentation, I'm going to turn it over to our Senior Science Advisor, Captain Elizabeth DeGrange.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having us. Captain Elizabeth DeGrange, Guam EPA Senior Science Advisor. I believe we do have slides that got here in time. Again, my apologies that they were definitely late. That you also have hard copies that should be available. So yep, there we go. If we can just go to the next slide, please. Hopefully I can use my laser pointer. So a lot of this is going to look familiar. It's the same format, similar updates that we used last time. Since our testimony in December, we've conducted 2 additional farm inspections in cooperation with the Department of Agriculture. Again, same findings as before. We have 0 findings for storage or use of illegal pesticides, so that's really good news. We have submitted a formal request to Joint Region Marianas, and ma'am, do you want to step in? And I'm going to let Administrator Lastimoza discuss some details on that.
So as discussed in the last oversight hearing, we did have some information that would lead us to believe that we could determine a source. So in partnership with US EPA, we did provide a joint letter to Joint Region Marianas to initiate investigation of a Dieldrin source on Andersen Air Force Base. So US EPA, Guam EPA, and the United States Air Force entered into an agreement called the Federal Facilities Agreement under CERCLA, which is like super fun, right? So basically, they have had data that would indicate that there are Dieldrin hotspots within Andersen Air Force Base. And so using that data, which goes back maybe 30 years, we can then kind of justify the need for that investigation. So we did send a letter to JRM, and we asked that they provide us an investigation plan by February 27th of 2026. So we'll wait for that investigation plan. to see how they will go about looking for a contamination source on Andersen Air Force Base.
Captain DeGrange again, sir. I think it's also important to note Admiral Midas JRM did acknowledge that receipt. They're very cooperative, and he intends to get with his legal team and his environmental staff and then get back with us sometime, he said next week, so we can discuss next steps for that. In addition to sending that formal request to JRM, we have requested formally to US EPA to assess an evaluation of additional risks that might exist in Tumon Bay. Last time we talked about the TMDL, the total maximum daily limit that Guam EPA had approved in August of this year. The levels in the water there are 100 times lower than what we saw in Y-15. So based on the research that we did in evaluating Y-15, we're fairly certain there's no additional risk to the community through dermal exposure. Our bigger concern is consumption of larger fish, and we only have data from 4 fish, again, as we discussed last hearing. That's not enough data. We do know that the subsistence fishing that happens in that area would be smaller fish, so less likely to have higher volumes of dieldrin from consuming other fish. So again, we suspect there's a lower risk, but we want to do some more formal evaluation about that. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is also another formal request in partnership with the Department of Public Health and Social Services, the Department of Agriculture, and ma'am, I'll turn it over to you for some details there.
So we also sent a letter to ATSDR to request for a public health assessment, not only for dieldrin, but chlordane and PFAS substances in our drinking water. So they've been very helpful to us, and public health will talk more about that request. But we also did a joint letter to ATSDR to request for that public health assessment.
Okay. Yeah, let me just say that, thank you for all that information. If we do happen to, I mean, and if the body and the chairs, the co-chairs for this oversight decide that we can adjourn further hearings, oversight hearings of that, I would just advise that all agencies communicate closely with your oversight chairs, okay? And should it warrant another oversight, then we'll regroup and call for that oversight. But you know, I think we're on the right path in identifying and isolating situations here, and that we can work with the different oversight chairs that have oversight of the different entities. Now, as having the oversight for federal affairs as well, can you reiterate, you said, what JRM had responded to the investigation?
So Admiral Midas has acknowledged the receipt of the request, okay, and has been cooperating and should meet the deadline of February 27th in providing us that investigation plan.
Oh, providing the investigation plan. A plan. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's not a completion of the investigation, it's just a plan put together. So that would be great if you can just provide that as well to the appropriate your agency oversights. And likewise, if you provide that for me as well, because I have oversight of federal affairs.
Will do, okay? Mr. Chairman.
We'll do that. It sounds good. One other thing I want to ask, because we've been fielding calls from our office, and I don't know exactly who they're calling. I think they were calling. They said EPA and Weary, I think, is who they were calling. But a couple individuals that live or have property in the Mount Santa Rosa area, okay, had called and said that either they were leasing property or sold property, and there were, I guess, foreign investors that had bought the property and were bulldozing the area. And supposedly their material that they're bulldozing is being bulldozed into a cavern or a cave area. Okay? And so they're asking for a, I guess, investigation, whether or not, again, that has any effect. And they suspect, because they're supposed to farm the area, supposedly, they suspect that the ground is being, I guess, fertilized somehow, or something being sprayed. So maybe you can.
Thanks for that question, sir. We also received that from multiple directions. It was forwarded to us from GWA. We received it directly. Our monitoring team and our investigators did go out. We talked with the gentleman who submitted that information. The area that was formerly known as a hiking spot or a cave is actually a large sinkhole. We did not find evidence of recent bulldozing or trash in the area. We did not see any evidence of illegal pesticides in the area. So without the ability to test directly on site, that's what we were able to determine. So we're happy to go back out if he still feels like there's concerns, or anyone else from the community still feels like there's concerns. But we did investigate that complaint.
Okay, so your initial investigation, nothing warrants further investigation unless there may be
in the
further
area that we
there.
looked.
Okay.
And if they're referencing a different area, from the verbal description and from the maps that we were provided, we think we were in the right area. But if we were somehow not in the right area, or someone wants to take us out and walk with us, we're happy to go back out.
Yeah, and they were concerned as well that there might be some spraying being done over the aquifer or something like that. So I mean, were the grounds tested for?
Sure. So the grounds have not been tested. There's a few reasons for that. Number one is we're working on getting price quotes and then determining, our FY26 funding is cut, right? So we're looking at losing most of our funding, and so we're evaluating, what resources, how best to leverage, and then also looking at the cost, the time that would be implicated. In a few slides, we can talk more about that, or I can just skip to it now. Essentially, testing, we evaluated costs for the 55 sites and different strata of samples, so fish tissue, marine water, sediment, soils. So at 55 sites, those different samples are anywhere from $25,000 to about $100,000 to get tested additionally for multiple chemicals. So we're working on seeing if there are other commercial labs that might be able to do it. EPA, US EPA is also evaluating if they have any lab capacity to be able to assist. And then we're looking at the samples that we're going to run for this year's wetland survey. That would be river water, soil taken from, again, another 55 sites. So last year was a coastal survey, so mostly coastal sites. This year's wetland survey will run across the island. Again, that's another $50,000 to $100,000 in sample testing alone. That doesn't count shipping and some of the other staff costs to go out and do the sampling. So we're working on finding a source of funding and how best to incorporate that. I think the second point to that is that we're going to work with DOD in their investigation. So once we see what their investigation plan is, because of the proximity of Y15 and because of the drainage that we've learned from the hydrology, it might be that in their investigation they can conduct some of that testing.
Okay.
We good? Can I
Yeah.
go on the next slide? Okay. If we could go to slide number 4. And thank you to whoever is operating these slides for me. Okay. Mr. Riley mentioned this earlier. The risk assessment document, we received comments from one citizen and then also from GWA. We're still in the process of adjudicating those comments, mostly because I was out of the office for a couple weeks. And then we had the holidays, of course. Those comments are, one that from the private citizen, we're requesting clarification and language on approved systems for reimbursement. We noted specifically in our guidance that any product that would be adequate for the removal of pesticide from drinking water had to be NSF ANSI 53 or 401 certified. There are third-party certification agencies that claim to test and certify to those NSF or ANSI levels. we need to go back and evaluate if their certification and testing is in fact the same or comparable to what NSF and ANSI use. So we are taking that for action. That was also one of GWA's comments, was would we consider third parties? So the answer to that is yes, obviously. Once we get those comments compiled, adjudicated, responded to, then certainly we'll make sure that the oversight chairs see that, but that will also be published as that package moves to our board of directors. We hope that it will be available for the 22nd of January at our next board meeting.
Okay.
Slide number 5, please. Obviously, our regular meetings with US EPA, GWA, and our other partners are still continuing. I talk with my partners at Public Health and DOAG every couple of days, actually, seems like. We will be meeting with the regional administrator to discuss, I think, parts of the investigation, with JRM and with us. I think it looks like the end of March that meeting will happen.
Okay.
And certainly we'll provide updates on that as well. This I already discussed, we met with US EPA discussing potential costs for the additional sampling. And again, we've had some follow-up with WERI's principal hydrologist, Dr. Nate Habana, and his counterpart, Claire Snare. And this was to evaluate the hydrology around D17 and then M3 and M4 because they're the other hot spots, as it were. So if we could go to slide 6, this is why I really want you guys to have your own packet in front of you. So I apologize to anyone having to look at this. I'll try and use a laser pointer, but I don't promise that I've got skill that good, so I apologize. All right, so in this line, or in this map, you can see the wells, D15 through D18. In their approximate area. It's north of Micheche and sort of south of the Ukadu Basin. The orange lines there are the wellhead protection zones. They're on the right-hand side of the map. There are many other wells that are drinking water production wells. The red dots or the red areas just above the color key, that's surface water from a pond and the golf course. So the red there is not relevant. It's an old map that Doc Habana pulled to help us understand the hydrology here better. And Chief Engineer, please correct me if I mess this up. These wells are all, I think, parabasal, so they're over the salt water? No, they're over the rock. So they're over the volcanic rock, but they don't have salt water underneath them. So it's just fresh water on top of the rock.
Oh, okay.
That may or may not be relevant, but unlike Y15 that was perched, this water does have the opportunity to run into the rest of the aquifer, so there could be mixing. It is Dedido, yeah. So I think that's the majority of just kind of orienting you to this map. So we can go to the next slide, please.
Did you want to, when you go, okay, come up, yeah. So.
Sorry, Pete. Please forgive me for calling on our chief engineer in the back of the room.
Can you just identify yourself, the chief engineer? And, yeah.
Pete Bautista, Chief Engineer, Guam EPA.
Okay.
Okay, so if we are now, what is that, slide 7? Yeah. So this slide's a little bit different than the ones that we presented in the last oversight hearing. And this was from a 2006 study that Dr. Habana and his team at WERI conducted, I think on behalf of Guam EPA. And this shows, so the orange lines are sewer lines. And then, they conducted some verification to see which houses had connected to sewer and which were not. So you'll see those outlined. If it's red, it's not connected to sewer, et cetera. So, just showing some proximity there. Again, not sure that this means or doesn't mean anything for, the relative impact to, or the relative impact of Dieldrin. But again, we're just working on understanding the hydrology. So I won't belabor all of the.
It's the same location, exact location as the previous slide. The previous slide is an aerial it's a picture. This is more just like lines and geometry, showing
Okay.
the wellhead radius
Okay.
and the well
Okay.
locations. Sorry. D17 is the one in question, and it's got a orange triangle, meaning it's high in nitrates,
Correct, we're seeing increased nitrates.
right
Thanks for-
along the sewer line.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Anything else we missed on that?
No, this doesn't really show the
The yellow was the sewer line?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
okay.
streets and the sewer
Okay, okay,
lines. Yeah.
okay.
So that's right at the heart of Dieldrin.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Okay, and then going to our next slide. Thank you, by the way. So this is the M series of wells, and again, M3 and M4 have been near or just over the interim action level of 0.2 parts per billion or micrograms per liter. And so I think what's important to note here is that they're essentially pulling the same water, right? It looks like there's a lot of overlap in their wellhead protection zone. The next map will show it better, but you can see M4 is basically in a big ditch. So all of the water is running into M4, which is why we're seeing generally higher levels there, I suspect. But again, just trying to understand the hydrology in the area. I believe that's Lottie Heights is the community, and then we'll pull up. I think let's go to the next slide. And again, similar to to 2 slides ago, you can see here, this study was looking at sewered versus non-sewered and the impact on nitrates, right? So you'll see here, EX11 and M4 have red triangles. That means they're extremely high levels of nitrates there. And then all the orange triangles are showing increasing nitrates that are over, I think, 4 parts per million or 5 parts per million. So nitrates is not necessarily an indicator for the chemicals that we see with dieldrin or chloridane, and so I don't want to mislead anybody and say, hey, there's high nitrates, so we would expect high levels of pesticide here. That's not what I'm saying. This was just a map that he was able to pull quickly and sort of demonstrate, you know, that these wells are pulling from the same area. If you'll notice also across the very top of this map, there's a thick blue line. And that is, it's basically a hydrological fault, right? We talked about that last time. So water is going to go perpendicular to that line, which means all the water from this housing is running into these wells. So again, it's not really a smoking gun necessarily, but it does help us understand better the hydrology. And so we've asked Dr. Habana and his team, and again, I can take no credit for this work, but except asking him to do it. But we've asked him to dig into a few other things just to see if we can better understand the water flow in the area and then how that might be impacting the wells that are affected. Let's go to the next slide. And I put this in here because I knew I would probably say them backwards. So again, it's that same picture where you have Y15 to the furthest left. You can see it's in the suprabasal area, so that water's perched. It's not mixing with the rest of the aquifer. The parabasal is just over the basement rock. It is not, it's not over salt water, but it can mix obviously with the rest of the freshwater lens. And then all the wells, the D15 through D18 wells we discussed, are over the saltwater part of the aquifer. And with that, we can go to my last slide, and we'll take any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask as well, because you just mentioned on the slide, I think it's 2 slides back, in regards to the work that was been done in detection. It's not a smoking gun, but maybe areas of concern. Do you feel there's a potential that will exacerbate, I mean, the situation there?
I think the more we learn about the hydrology, the more it helps us to understand what the potential sources would be, right? Because if the water's only flowing in from one specific area, then at least you know what direction to go look to. It's definitely helping us narrow down. All right, we talked about testing soils and what impacts there might be. It's helping us narrow down, right, to be frugal with, you know, the resources that we do have, because we all have limited resources. So it's absolutely helping us to narrow down, what strata we should be testing, where we should be testing, and what potential sources might be.
Yeah, and the reason why I was asking is if you can please, whatever information you have, updated information, please forward that to your oversight chair, and maybe even more than just forwarding it, because if I read that, it's written by really smart folks like you guys, and so you're gonna have to dumb it down for me, So if you can maybe meet with your oversight chairs, because,
Absolutely.
Because we almost on a monthly, well, every other month now we make decisions, right?
Yeah.
And we have bills that we tackle, okay? And so we need to know, what's happening in the environment, okay? And if some of the things that we're deciding on is on the border of what you guys are concerned about, then we need to know ahead of time. So and if there's red flags going up a little bit, and density issues and things of that nature, right? So it's important that you get, but more especially your EPA and your housing oversight chair with that, get that, and again, not just send that summary out, but maybe have a sit-down briefing. I appreciate that. Help us make better decisions when we come to housing density and things of that nature.
Absolutely, sir. And I know that we have been considering, the oversight hearing as an opportunity to help you guys know what we know.
Sure.
I don't think it's dumbing it down for anybody. I think it's just putting it in a language that people understand.
I'm talking for myself.
I speak nerdy stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm actually smart. So I do appreciate, though, that being able to actually ask questions and explain it to various populations is useful. So I'll work with Administrator Lastimoza and make sure that as we get data, we can sit down and discuss with you all. I think most of the data that I pulled is publicly available. One of the reasons that you haven't seen me put all of the data here is I need to make sure what's publicly available, just for the sake of, what should be out versus what we're making decisions on. Sure. Not that that's meant to hide anything. I just need to make sure it's cleared with all the appropriate parties. Sure. So.
Yeah, no, and again, we don't want to put information out there that's, there's just a concern, but, in further study, there's nothing to it, right? Yeah, okay. Before I ask Public Health, I'd like to recognize, of course, Senator Shelley Calvo. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much. So, Public Health, any update? Yeah.
Half a day, Senators. My
Update.
name is Leilani Navarro. I'm an Environmental Public Health Officer Administrator with the Division of Environmental Health, or DEH. So as previously mentioned in the December hearing, all the establishments that are regulated by DEH that have been closed in the Santa Rosa area has been permitted to operate since December. And so we have no further updates in that regard. However, I recall there was a request by Senator Lujan about the estimated cost of the response. So we actually did calculate that DEH's response to the Dieldrin contamination is approximately $862. This consists primarily of personnel cost related to conducting 20 inspections of the 11 facilities that we regulate. The estimated cost per inspection was calculated by averaging the hourly rate of 2 inspectors who conducted each inspection and assuming an average inspection duration of 1 hour per establishment. Please note that this cost does not include administrative cost or the cost to participate in coordination meetings with relevant agencies and oversight hearings and preparing presentations and summary reports. The Division of Environmental Health continues to monitor the situation. We continue to coordinate with involved agencies and ready to assist however we can. Thank you.
You said the facilities that were initially, I guess, tagged as challenged that are now operating. I think there are a couple of them that are water stations or something like that, right?
Yes.
Now, were these water stations, did they have the filters installed then, or
Yes.
there's okay?
Yes, sure. So in coordination with Guam EPA and GWA, I believe it was September 15 when we did joint inspections with them, and we actually collected samples of water samples from those three vending machines. Even though they have the system in place, right? We just wanted to make sure that the Dieldrin, if there's any Dieldrin contamination there. So after the lab tests were sent to us from GWA and EPA, we were informed that they were actually, I believe there's one that's non-detect. Okay, all of them were non-detect. So based on EPA's recommendation where they said that those water sources are considered approved source, so we opened them up.
Okay. Now, how often will these water stations need to change the filters out? Because if it's our household, I mean, yeah, we wash our clothes and take a shower and things like that. But these water stations, that's all they do is turn on the faucet, right, and water. So how is their filtration system from maybe a home system, and how frequently do they have to replace that filtering system?
The usual recommendation is they have to follow the manufacturer's instructions. So each system would, of course, come with its manual and instructions. So when we do conduct the inspections, we ask for a copy of those manufacturer's instructions, and we verify if they're following those frequencies.
Okay, and again, once again, because initially when we were told about Dieldrin and the filtration system, that even the filtration, the filters themselves could not just be disposed in a garbage can. They have to be a hazmat type thing. Is that still the thinking? Because they said it has to be dried out and then taken and removed off island. How is that disposed of, and how does the home or again, this water station, if they replace it, via manufacturer's recommendations, they replace it themselves, how do they dispose of that filtration system?
Usually, Senator, the storage and disposal is also listed in the manufacturer's manual. So we recommend that they follow those instructions.
Okay. Now, the other thing, if they follow the instructions, based on following the right instructions, can they just dispose of it with the regular weekly garbage disposal, or what?
I am not actually familiar with that. Perhaps our counterparts from EPA can answer that.
I don't want that to turn into another situation, right? And a disposal as such. And now, if they're following manufacturers' disposal routine, right? And yeah, you put it in this bag that we're giving to you, and yeah, it can be disposed of with your regular trash. But how is that being disposed of?
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, sir. Captain DeGrange again. I believe I'm the one that brought that up, right? So with GPA, we have talked about the storage and disposal plan because the volume of granular activated carbon is so big, right? With the smaller systems and even with the store systems, which are more robust than your home system, right? Or even than a point of entry system, because the expectation is that they will have higher flow rates, far more gallon, just volume flowing through. Again, those are encapsulated, right? So it's not like you're just dumping that carbon into the trash can. They're encapsulated, and water is only going to flow in one way and out the other way. So there's a much lower risk of any pesticide or any contaminant desorbing from that activated carbon. So if it's in the regular garbage, it's fine, relatively speaking, right? So with the GAC and the permanent and the interim systems, it's not necessarily encapsulated when it leaves that vessel. So that's why we have different concern with it. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hafide, good afternoon. Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Matanani, and esteemed members of the legislature. My name is Patrick Soto. I'm the territorial epidemiologist for the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Thank you for having me here again. So my update is rather short. So we continue to monitor the toxic effects due to pesticide poisoning via the surveillance systems that we have in place at the department. And to this day, there continues to be 0 cases that have reported either at our outpatient clinics or our community health centers or at even an emergency room at the hospitals. I failed to mention at the first oversight hearing that a physician advisory or a physician alert was disseminated to all of the licensed providers throughout Guam. This was disseminated early October and provided treatment guidance to those providers and who to call in the events that a patient showed up at their clinic or at the ER or at the hospital. The Department of Public Health and Social Services, as was mentioned earlier, in collaboration with the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Agriculture had submitted a joint letter of request to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more commonly known as CDC, Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry. I apologize, this is a new center that I have to deal with, so it's quite a tongue twister for me, or ATSDR for short. The ATSDR is a federal, non-regulatory environmental public health agency overseen by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and is the lead federal public health agency for determining, preventing, and mitigating the human health effects of exposure to hazardous substances. The public health assessment that we requested for is one of several services they offer, and it evaluates a hazardous waste site for hazardous substances, health outcomes, and community concerns. The assessment also looks at whether people could be harmed by coming into contact with site-related substances. These assessments are often the evaluation tool of choice when a site contains multiple contaminants and multiple potential pathways of chemical exposure. And with that being said, and I'm very glad Guam EPA had brought it up because it was brought up about emerging environmental contaminants or emerging environmental hazards such as PFAS. We also incorporated an element of PFAS into this public health assessment, as well as general language surrounding emerging environmental contaminants. This public health assessment is very different from the epidemiologic study that we have proposed early on, but it seeks to inform the development and the methodology that will eventually underline how we approach this epidemiologic study. And then we continue to work with across the different agencies, especially with ATSDR. And in fact, we have a meeting next week, Thursday, I think? Thursday or Wednesday, to follow up and discuss next steps. We also submitted a letter to the office of our Congressman James Moylan requesting additional funding to support the implementation of that epidemiological study that we had brought up in the first oversight. Because there's been strong interest in this study, since the first oversight and even before that first oversight, I went ahead and gathered some interest or commitment from different subject matter experts, environmental health experts, and epidemiologists to put together a steering committee that will help drive the methodologies for this epidemiologic study. So this continues to remain a top priority for us, and we will work, as we have always done so in the past, very closely with our agencies, both locally and nationally or federally. And with that, that's my updates, rather brief, and I apologize for not putting together slides.
Thank you very much. Duek? Yeah. Update? You. Department of Ag.
Sorry, Senator. It's like, who, me? I'm sorry, Senator La. No, Department of Ag, our partners have reported all our updates. The same, we conducted additional inspections with EPA, and together with DPHSS and EPA, we put together the letter for ATSDR. So we're just pending feedback from all of that. Yeah, and evaluating and sampling and waiting for that to be conducted so that we can have more information to offer.
Yeah, one thing I'm just going to ask again, when I asked before, in regards to the farming that's being done up in these areas of concern. Is there any concern at this point again, or and I know that I asked the captain last time, and she said there's nothing that science can tell her at this point that will say that that, you know, it wouldn't be safe to consume product or, you know, things that are grown up there, right? Is the science still tell you the same thing?
Yeah, so, you know, as Mr. Soto mentioned, right, we're not seeing patients show up seeking care for anything that would be symptomatic of pesticide poisoning. We're not seeing acute exposures, you know, with contact in any water. We're not necessarily seeing any differences in cancer rates. And I know that, you know, there's a bigger forensic study looking back to try and evaluate some of that. So we're not seeing any evidence that people are being impacted by consuming those crops from that area. And again, I've pulled a few more studies, but it doesn't give us definitive data or information about the crops that are there. Part of our consideration getting additional testing done, right, so those samples, we have also asked to include some of the crops that are in the area. So we'll get a better idea of the soil contamination levels, which will help us to better understand the bioaccumulation in various crops and animals. And so I think that will help, but our intent is to include some of those crops in the additional sampling and testing that we hope to start conducting very soon.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, Senator.
No?
That's
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just got a few more questions, then I'll turn it over to the other committee oversight. So, yeah, it's looking like, yeah, we'll be able to, again, just have you folks work with your oversight chairs and brief them, and hopefully on a monthly basis on what's going on, and then, you know, the newest findings and things of that nature, right? But, you know, we just want to reiterate some of the things, of course, in the past and make sure that we don't repeat it, okay? So when a contaminant like Dieldrin is detected in our water system, what is the formal interagency response process? Can we get a clarification of that? So we know the chain of command basically here. So we, you know, again, we get that straight this time around. So when a contaminant like Dieldrin is detected in our water system, what is the formal interagency response process?
So
Who takes the lead, and what are the specific responsibilities of each agency that is here today from the moment the issue has been identified?
Yeah, Julie. So do you want to, would it be okay, sir,
Sure,
if we
sure.
brought our drinking water program lead, Ms. Juliana Mendoza? She handles the drinking water side of things. So your question's not as easy as it sounds, right? There are lots of overlapping responsibilities between our agencies, which is why the communication that we have is so important. For drinking water contaminants that are identified, I'm going to let Ms. Mendoza discuss that response, because she would be the lead in that, working with GWA and then affected persons. If contaminants are detected in some other strata, if it's groundwater, if it's coastal water, or it's other organisms, then generally whoever found it is going to initiate that communication. So if we are seeing those contaminants through coastal evaluations, then we're working with US EPA. Whenever I am notified of anything like that, my first point of outreach is to our territorial EPI. I apologize to the rest of the Department of Public Health. I don't mean to exclude you, but he's a great point of contact, and I know he shares the information. So our first step, I think, in almost any investigation, other than just drinking water specifically, is we say, hey, we found this, let's put our heads together and figure out whose authorities are where, right? And then we do our best to leverage all the resources that we have, both federally and locally. I've got a pretty big network of really nerdy people, and that helps in saying, hey, what are the real risks of this? Or, you know, digging into the science about you know, what the contaminant is. I leverage these guys for public health impacts. And, you know, we collectively leverage our networks, which seem to have a lot of overlap, given that Patrick will ask someone for something and I'll ask someone for something, and then usually they say, ask Captain DeGrange, and I'm like, oh, that's great. So we do have really good communication. I think that's important.
Now, see, what I'm getting to is that when, you know, again, the initial oversight, and then the first town hall meeting as well, right? This information in regards to Dieldrin in the water was known for quite some time, Okay? Now I know that the warning level was not issued out, at that period of time, but you can see how, folks will react to, you've known it, it's been in the water, how come you didn't tell us so we can start taking precautions, at that time that it was detected? So that's what I'm trying to get to, is that, again, we don't want to scare the public, but we need to inform them as well, be transparent and what is there. And there may be a concern now. It may, it's not put out as an advisory at this point, but there is a concern. And I think that's what the public wants to know at this point, is that, who takes the lead in this? When are they going to be notified? And then when they hear that, it was notified 2013 or whenever it was, and here it is, 2025, and this is the first we're hearing of it.
I feel your pain, sir, and that for the community. I will say that at multiple points over those years, reports that are publicly available have been out there.
Yeah. We'll see, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking again, right? We're moving forward. We're learning. This is a teaching and learning moment, right?
Indeed.
We can't do this again. Agreed. Okay, we can't do this again. Please work closely with your oversight chairs, and if there's any concern, bring it up to them, because we may read it, but again, these things that come out, they're probably written more for the science-oriented person, and okay, so what does that mean? If I don't see carcinogen or cancer or something like that, I may not have a concern.
Absolutely.
Okay, but there may be something in there that I should be concerned about. Okay,
yeah.
So these are the things, like, again, that we learn from what has happened, and the community response, and the uproar that the community had at the time. We don't want that.
Agreed.
But we don't want to scare them as well, and every little thing that comes out. But we need to be informed, and although it's out there, if you don't have the specific eye to look at it and read into it, we don't know what we're reading, basically, right?
I think just as a disclaimer, when we talk about emerging contaminants in our drinking water, and over the last 2 years, and even on a national level, PFAS is a concern that is growing, even for Guam EPA. And even for GWA, I'm sure, as we, have discussed mitigation efforts for not only Dieldrin, but in the future for Guam EPA as a regulatory agency, when we start regulating for compliance for PFAS, which at this point is not targeted until 2031. Even though we know there is probably this legacy contamination all over the country, including Guam. So, again, not to make the same mistakes where the public is not informed, we probably want to say there's probably PFAS in our water. To what degree and to what contamination level, we don't know, because they haven't set a regulatory standard.
We won't know until we know, right?
Until we know, but we're saying that we probably know that there is PFAS in our drinking water.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Juliana Mendoza. I am the Environmental Health Specialist with the Safe Drinking Water Program. And to add to these emerging contaminants, and again, we had a little discussion. We don't really know what the health effects are for the PFAS, but from this experience with the Dieldrin and with the PFAS, it's just right around the corner. We're taking, lesson learned is that we want to communicate and do more public outreach, be more informative of this contaminant that is, of these emerging contaminants. So rest assured, with the Safe Drinking Water Program, we thought that we've done, we made assumption that we did public outreach in this past 2 years, but it's not enough. And we are hearing the public. And so with that said, moving forward, we will be more, we'll do more public outreach and be more proactive, do public education, public outreach.
And maybe what we should do is, as well, and most especially the areas of concern, right? The GEGO area, is that, and I'm sure you do that as well now, but maybe meet, regularly with your village mayors, you know, because they're the ones that they're the community there, and they're the ones that are being called probably on a daily basis. They need the information almost daily for the calls that they may be getting from you know, from residents of those areas. The other thing is, again, from what we've learned before, what are we looking at in regards to timeline between detection, confirmation, and public notification?
All right, for drinking water, the public water systems, an example would be GWA or Anderson or US Navy. Once samples are collected, usually takes anywhere from 1 week to 2 weeks. They're required to submit those documents the following month or the quarter after, which is due at the 10th of that following quarter. Now, if there are any detection, they will be put on increased monitoring for the next quarter. For the next 4 quarters, determine what the running annual average to determine if there's an interim action level.
Mm-hmm. So what triggers, again, public advisory?
A tier one would be any exceedance of the interim action levels of 0.5 parts per billion. Tier 2, well, the tier 1 they need to inform their affected customers within 24 hours, so they will have to issue that advisory, which is the public notification, which is a tier 1. Mm-hmm. A tier 2 is if there's an exceedance of the interim action level of 0.2 parts per billion, and they have up to 30 days to notify their affected customers.
Are you seeing any increase on the detection of whatever it is that you're detecting when we have more rainfall than other times and flooding and things like that, or is?
It's pretty much consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's and again the wells that we are seeing aside from Y15, well. Now with Y15, there's no detection, and with the other 2 wells, we're watching those other wells closely. If they exceeded, you know, just a little bit over 50% of the interim action level.
Okay. Yeah, you saw. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir. I would say that in the coastal waters and the coastal areas, that's where we tend to see impacts after rainfall. Obviously, we're not testing those waters regularly for Dieldrin. We test them for fecal indicator bacteria, which is a good indicator for what other pollutants might be coming into the coastal waters. In the very limited data, or the very limited testing data that we have regarding Dieldrin and chloridane, they did say, you know, we saw higher values on this date and this date, and they were directly after rainfall. So in the coastal waters, I think that's where we would see, I think the aquifer is more dispersed, right? So you have a little bit more even mixing in there, which is why we are probably unlikely to see a spike then.
The next question I have, I think will probably be answered more when you get the information from JRM, the I guess historical data, right, that they have, because the question is basically what work is currently underway to identify likely source areas and pathways for Dieldrin contamination. And of course, are there records, right? And you're looking at that, maps or historical land use information that can help narrow down, again, the source of Dieldrin. So we're hoping that the information provided by JRM to you folks will be able to again, kind of hone in on the source,
Absolutely,
possible source.
sir.
Yeah. Okay.
The limited data that we do have, which is all publicly available in Superfund reports that have come out, there's groundwater data, so from their long-term testing program. So they have monitoring wells that are in and around the known Superfund sites. So I went back through 30 years of data, which took me a lot more time. Like if I calculated the amount of hours I've spent on this, I think we're probably close to like $25,000 or $50,000 just in hours that I've spent in Dieldrin since August. But you know, looking back at that data, we do see detections of Dieldrin over time. Some of those wells have come off long-term monitoring, but because of that data, that's what we took to US EPA, and collectively, that's why we went to JRM. So I do hope that we're going to be able to narrow things down a little bit more. But again, we need more data to really sort that out. So,
Likewise, the testing results and sampling locations and advisories, advisory thresholds, they're shared across the agencies and in real time. In real time.
Like I said, we talk several times a week, and we're literally just a phone call away.
Okay.
So we have very good connectivity, and whenever I see something I'm concerned about, I let these guys know. When they find things they're concerned about, they let me know, and so I feel very confident in our ability to communicate. I realize that over the years, that's probably ebbed and flowed a little bit. At this point in time, I feel like we have excellent communication.
Okay. And likewise, when you share that information, again, please share that with your respective agency oversights, right? Make sure that it's clear and accessible to the public, because we all have websites and we can put that in our websites as well. And, we need to understand it, so when our constituents give us a call, we understand it even more, maybe more so than just a scientific writing, right? Okay.
Noted, yes.
Okay. That being said, Senator or Vice Speaker?
Thank you, Senator. I was just listening, and I hope that the bottom line is there's a better process for communication now between the agencies, and once a contaminant or there's a concern for public notification, that notification goes out expeditiously, but not to scare the public, but just to keep them informed, and hopefully that we'll be able to have that process in place. I think the only question I had was for Department of Environmental Health. You were mentioning about the facilities. I believe it was 11 facilities that were requested to close, or?
No, sir. No, Senator. There were 11 facilities that were inspected were in the affected area, but three facilities were temporarily closed, awaiting result. These are the vending machines. They awaited result of the water test. And then they reopened on September 30th. And then 3 other facilities, which are food manufacturers, these facilities, they voluntarily ceased operation until GWA lifted the Dieldrin related notice.
Okay, and what was the longest period that they were closed, or they voluntarily closed there?
So the water vending machines were inspected and asked to cease operations September 15, and they reopened September 30th, so 15 days. And then the food manufacturers, they voluntarily ceased operation on September 15, and they were informed that they may resume operation when GWA lifted the notice on November 17, so approximately 1 month.
Approximately 1 month. So would there be any prorated, because I know they're permitted, right? So is there going to be any prorate for when they renew their permits again? So instead of paying for a 12-month permit now, they'll just pay for 11 months?
For the facilities that either ceased operation voluntarily or were asked to cease operation, there's actually no language in the existing regulations that allow for prorating for the times that they were closed.
So there's no language, so there's nothing that, but is there anything that prevents you from prorating their permits for the next?
I will have to ask and review the regs, Senator, and we can
definitely let you know. Because just as much as the public was affected, right, so were the businesses, and anything to help mitigate for the next cycle for their license renewals or permit renewals, that there's some type of consideration
we'll look into it.
In prorating their fees for either the water stations or their businesses as they voluntarily closed, right? So, but other than that, thank you for all the information that you've given us. And like I said, as long as we have a better communication process of how the public gets notified, I think that everything else will be able to move forward. And like you said, Mr. Chair, that would probably just be concluding this oversight, and hopefully we just get informational briefs in the future. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. We appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Matanani, the Chairperson for Health and Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did just have a couple of questions, follow up to the presentations from today, and I'll start with the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, where it states that on page 2, formal request sent to Joint Region Marianas from US CPA and Guam EPA to undertake an investigation of possible sources of Dieldrin at Andersen Air Force Base. When was that request sent?
It was sent Christmas Eve, no, the day before Christmas Eve, so the 23rd of December. It was acknowledged by JRM on 28 December.
And what prompted this request?
My data review of all the data that I could find, conversations with US EPA. Obviously, you know, when the entirety of the community is saying it's the military, then, you know, we want to look at the data and be able to rule it out or rule it in. So, you know, that's partnership that we have with our partners in DoD and then also with US EPA. So there's kind of a number of things.
Okay. Yeah, the reason why I asked that is because I remember in the very first oversight hearing, I had mentioned how I had watched some of the Guam EPA board meetings and how the Guam EPA brought up the fact that they'd noticed these increasing levels of Dieldrin in the water, and there was this investigation that was supposedly started several years ago to determine the source of the contamination. So I'm just kind of wondering, why is it just now, several years later, we're now requesting this investigation, and why not back then?
So we had, from that first oversight hearing, we did have a hypothesis, right? Like what we thought the contamination source was. And we can only think of, you know, mass soil disturbance. So we looked at, you know, things like housing units being demolished. And we all know, as Captain DeGrange reported in that first oversight hearing, that, you know, this pesticide was applied, you know, to the foundations of, you know, commercial, residential, even military buildings as a way to prevent termites, right? It was a termaticide. So, you know, the hypothesis was that it was probably due to demolition of these housing units. And initially, you know, we thought maybe it was South Fin. So where did that, you know, where did that demolition debris go? So we were looking at, you know, did it go to an unlined hard fill? So those were things that, you know, we couldn't confirm, but we suspected. And so, like Captain DeGrange said, in cooperation with US EPA, when US EPA's Superfund folks came out, so two inspectors came out in early December, we talked about their purpose on Guam, which was to inspect installation restoration program facilities, which included Andersen Air Force Base. And it was from that discussion that they mentioned that they have 30 years of data from this groundwater monitoring as part of the reports that are submitted under this federal decree, I guess, that would indicate that there was Dieldrin contamination, or there was Dieldrin detection. But because, again, like we mentioned, it was not a regulated contaminant, they weren't required to report. Although the levels were in the report, it just, no one cared to look for it necessarily because it was not a regulated contaminant. So when they brought that up, it was like, oh, you know, light bulb goes off, and we're like, oh, okay, maybe we should look at that. So from this request, if you, I did provide a copy so that you would get a copy of the letter that we submitted. You know, it does indicate that this agreement, this federal facilities agreement with all of DoD was signed in 1993. But it wasn't until 2009 that Joint Region Marianas assumed responsibility under this installation restoration program, which basically says, hey, we're responsible for any past, present activities on our base that might impact you know, the environment and the community. But it also further reminds them that if we do find contamination, if there is contamination that negatively affects the health and the health of human health and the environment, that they're responsible for mitigation. So again, like Captain DeGrange said, there's an acknowledgement of this request for investigation, and we'll just have to see. I mean, certainly the 30 years of data that Captain DeGrange kind of scoured over would indicate that it justifies that they could be the source of contamination, because we can determine and confirm that there was housing units that were demolished adjacent to the fence line and adjacent to Y-15. We have to do our own. You know, they're going to do an investigation within the fence, and like Captain DeGrange said, we'll have to do, you know, our part to test soils outside of the fence, because they're not responsible for that. But again, you know, resources, technical assistance from US EPA, that's all of the things that we have to consider, but that we're going to do. So in terms of this request to JRM, we'll have to wait. You know, February 27th is the date for them to give us their investigation plan, and then we'll move forward from there.
I appreciate that response, but again, it's kind of frustrating when, you know, we're talking about the public's trust and things that have happened over the last several years, and knowing the fact that just watching that Guam EPA board meeting from years ago, that it was a concern, and it wasn't thought about then, you know what I mean, to look back and reach out to the military regarding a potential source. So I look forward to, I guess, what happens from here. So if it is determined that the source, though, is from the Department of Defense, we are going to hold them accountable. Other questions I have is for the Guam Waterworks Authority. I'm not a hydrologist. I'm not an expert in anything related to what you do. You're the expert on this. So I wanted you to just kind of break down, this is on page 5, that you broke down all these different wells. If you could indicate what village they're in. M2 remains online. Is that Mangilao?
The M series wells are the Atacao area.
Okay.
Along with EX11 is also in the Atacao area.
Mm-hmm.
And then the D series wells, D18, D17, those are over by the Northern Public Health office near Weddingale Elementary.
Okay. So M2 remains online, Atacao. That means the water is safe to drink, right?
The water being produced by that well is under the interim action level set by
under the IAC. GEPA. So therefore it's safe to drink. D18 online remains safe to drink. M3 online intermittently is safe to drink. X11 remains online, again safe to drink. M4 safe to drink. D17 online since July 2025, safe to drink. Where it says treatment system under construction, when is the timeline for completion?
For A2325, is that what you're...
For M4 and D17?
So that's the one that is anticipated to be completed by this summer, but we expect the contractor may be able to complete ahead of the deadline.
And so, A23 and A25 offline since 2016?
Right, those wells were placed offline due to PFAS contamination in 2016 and have been offline since then. The treatment system that is being installed is a granular activated carbon system to treat the PFAS, but it will also treat Dieldrin and any other organic contaminant that is in that water, and that is currently under construction. That's the work going on Route 4 just up the hill from McDonald's. That's actively under construction.
Okay. I'm sorry, I needed to go back to the Guam EPA on the Anderson Air Force Base. It was mentioned that there was some Dieldrin hotspots. How many Dieldrin hotspots?
I don't think I said that there were hotspots on Andersen Air Force Base. I said we had data that showed detections. I don't have enough data to tell you that it's a hotspot or not, because what I was able to find in my forensic analysis of what was available online. So where I found detections are in the installation restoration program sites. And so that is part of what prompted us to put the request to JRM.
I'm sorry, what are insulation restoration sites?
Those are the sites that were contaminated and are deemed to be most contaminated through CERCLA, or also known as Superfund sites.
And how many again were there?
There are 4 primary areas. So there's 3 on the main installation, and then Marbo Annex. There may be one other one. Forgive me, I don't have all of the Superfund. I don't know all of the Superfund data for Andersen, but the areas where we found data showing Dieldrin detections, as Administrator Lastimoza discussed, were inside of those IRP sites.
Can you just provide a little bit more detail on where these sites are? You said main installation, 3 on the main installation
so
on Andersen Air Force
the Marbo
Base,
Annex, and then the east and central sides, or the east and central parts of Andersen Air Force Base. I will send a map.
Okay.
It's also available online. If you search Superfund Andersen Air Force Base, you'll be able to find more information there. And all the reports that I scoured through were available online through US EPA.
For public health, you mentioned that you had reached out to the Congressman's office on possible funding for the EPI study. How much are you looking at requesting?
We were requesting $3,291,147, and that includes testing kits, personnel for staff to be able to go out into the field and draw blood from approximately 7,000 individuals. So that's very close to the number that I gave just off the hand during the first oversight. And that was based off of the 1,118 ratepayers, and then I just assumed each household has an average size of 3.44, so that gave me approximately 7,000 for both a case, so someone who does have, or who lives in the affected area, and then it gave me, I doubled it to account for a comparison group, so some individuals or residents who weren't affected by that area.
Okay. And what about the assessment from ATSDR? It was mentioned about, is this going to be like a forensic assessment, and we're going to be looking back in time?
My understanding is everything that I did from the public health side, everything that Captain DeGrange did for Guam EPA, everything that Department of Agriculture had done, we kind of all did it in our own field or our own expertise, area of expertise. So the public health assessment from the ATSDR is going to take each assessment or do everything that we had done, but in a uniformed manner and a more consolidated and articulated study or assessment. Okay. So it's going to require, it'll be an iterative process. So I think in the second oversight, it was mentioned that it can take anywhere from 10 months to 12 months to greater than a year. And that's because we don't expect them to arrive on island. We'll be communicating them virtually. We might expect maybe 1 or 2 site visits throughout the assessment period.
I think it's important to note, so that the folks at ATSDR are toxicologists. None of us are toxicologists. So while we worked in our areas of expertise together looking at things, they are going to find every bit of data that they can find, right? They essentially have more resources that they can put to it than we do. They're gonna pull all available data, historic, that we have. They'll look for data that we haven't found yet, and they will leverage their scientific expertise to say, hey, what are the health impacts? So I think more than what we were able to do, just as toxicologists, which we're not, they will be able to provide a population level assessment, looking at data analysis, looking at bioaccumulation rates, looking at metabolic rates or metabolic impacts that might either increase or slow the processing and excretion of Dieldrin. So essentially, they're smarter people than we are, and they're going to pull all of the data that they can find together to make a more generalized population level assessment of risk and potential impacts.
And how long does an assessment like that take?
They told us anywhere from actually a year to 18 months to 2 years, depending on how complex and how broad an area. When we said all of Guam, they kind of freaked out a little bit, and we said, don't worry, it's like only 210 square miles, right? But the fact that we want to look at PFAS, the fact that we want to look at Dieldrin and chlordane will add to complexity. When we meet with them next week, I think part of what we want to discuss is, could you do it in segments? Can we look at Dieldrin and chlordane earlier, and then using a lot of that same data or other data related to PFAS, could we do a follow-on with PFAS? So I think we're going to discuss more of the specifics about that request. Initially they said, okay, well, let's look at GEGO. And we said, no, you have to look at the whole island because it doesn't just affect the people in GEGO, even though that's where they live, right? And so that was one of our big concerns, is looking island-wide. And then we have sporadic data from, a further swath or a bigger swath of the island that said, no, we have to look at everybody here. So those are some of the considerations that can add to complexity, which might take longer to conduct the study.
And is this something that the government has to pay for, or is
that is what ATSDR is here to do. That is their whole function as an agency. And so when we make that request, that assessment is at no cost to us. They will leverage their resources. We will provide them whatever information we can to assist, but they will also go out and do the research in looking up any relevant information. So the same way that Chelsea and Patrick and I have been looking for bioaccumulation rates in certain crops, or looking at metabolic rates in certain populations, or looking at where in the body does Dieldrin, live, they'll have more people that can go out and participate in scouring all the literature for data and for any information that might be relevant and useful.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, sir.
And just one more question. This one's for Guam Waterworks Authority. Brett, I'm just following up on your presentation on page 4, where it states POE contractors notified. As of January 6, GWA has received 313 applications for POEs and 44 applications for reimbursement. Have these been approved, or what happens next?
I don't have the number in front of me, but I know that a number of those requests for reimbursement have been reimbursed. And so the others are working through the process of ensuring that the proper equipment was installed and they live in the right area and all of that. So that's in progress for the reimbursements that have been submitted. For the 313, I think it's 314 or 15 now, that have requested for GWA's contractor to install a POE system at their residence. The next step, now that we have a contractor on board, is to do the assessment. So the contractor and operations and GWA engineering are coordinating to go through the list in order that they applied to get the POE installed, and do an assessment of the site to see where on their property it needs to get installed, and do they have an accessible area where we can tap into the water line after the meter and do the connections, and so that's a case by case for those assessments for each of the customers that have requested that install. So that's going to be starting, and at this point, that contract just recently got put in place, and so we're not up to speed with doing any installations yet, but that is in the works.
Okay. Well, thank you, representatives from Guam EPA, Department of Agriculture, Guam Waterworks, and the Department of Public Health. These hearings, it doesn't mean that everything stops and our work ends today. They're actually just the beginning and guiding us as how we move forward and toward more accountability, more transparency, and a more sense of urgency. So thank you for your time for coming down. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Bree. Senator Sean Gumentautown.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the panel for being with us again. I mentioned in the last oversight that it was such a fascinating discussion about what you presented the last time. Today, I don't think I'm not that far off again. I think that one of the things that, to kind of go to the chair's push earlier, is that while we might not be back here in a month, but the communities of Jigo and Manilao, which have entrusted all of you to do your best jobs to ensure the delivery of public services to every single one of us is done at a rate that is continuing to protect them. I'm hoping that there was major lessons learned in how we communicate with those two communities. And those are just smaller communities that can take all of those lessons and bring them to the rest of the island. Because as you mentioned earlier about the fact that there's going to be this chance that we're going to have to get the ASTDR, whatever the case might be, to look at the whole island. It makes me crazy because you're just like, we started at what was just an isolated part of our island, what could have been something very small, and now it's going to be a little bit larger. So when it's larger, you're going to have to communicate even more to ensure and to, I guess, to have the public trust in the work that you're doing and it's being done right. I mean, in my government career, this is interesting how we come back to circular discussions, and in my third iteration in government, I would never thought a generation later. There's young folks in this room, you were probably not even born. But when those first circular or maybe second iterations of the circular projects were happening, we thought maybe this could be it. But the price of progress is now we're seeing it full circle, that because of the work that we're doing to expand, to modernize Guam, even in 2026, these are some of the problems that we will face. These are chemicals that were banned 4 decades ago, and we're still having discussions about it. We spent, well, I haven't seen my water bill yet, but I have to pay my water bill, and it's all going to contribute back to modernizing a system that's trying to detect things that, quite frankly, we never would have thought we would be facing even in today. I mean, you guys do your jobs every day. Now, at some point in maybe 20 years, we're going to be doing the next circular type of contaminant. So when I'm looking at the younger folks in this room, and I do mean younger than me, it's the idea that all the science and all the work that's being done is if you see it in all of your surveillance and all that work, we pray as policymakers that you'll work with your bosses, work with your boards and these commissions that do govern you, and at some point bring it forward saying we have a problem. And do not be afraid to step forward and present that to them. They might go, oh, we would have never would have thought it would be here. Well, that's what they said about PFAS and Dieldrin. I wouldn't have never thought. Because I thought we were just dealing with a bunch of trash that was burning in a dump, what seemed like eons ago. Or the closure of a dump at Big Navy that was out of sight, out of mind for folks when I had much darker hair. But the idea is today, we just have to do a better job. I'm hoping that as the community was watching and listening today, the figures that were presented by GWA, the details on the reports of the plans over the next, could be six months to a year. I'm hoping that the community is seeing that there is much more work to be done, but we cannot let off the gas. But please don't think that just because we did this one set of oversights and the chair said we're not going to be here again, that your work is over. Your work is just starting. And I would hope that you will continue your diligence. I hope you will continue to be more transparent. I mean, I'm okay on my end. I feel as a policymaker, I know we're like the last to know, but it's the communities of Jigo, the communities of Mangilao, that need you all to be at your best. Obviously, if you don't, I mean, I'm not going to be a total jerk about it today, but if you would like to step down and let others do it, that's fine too. But the idea is just do your very best, please, for all of our sakes. And I hope that the directors that are here, thank you for your continued work. And as you communicate back to the governor of Guam, and you guys are working, especially at your levels with them, that they also she is reminded, as well as the lieutenant governor, that you're doing your very best, and we're hoping that they would also do your best, especially when you're asking for support, not just for yourselves, but the communities that you serve. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time, and I appreciate again everyone's. Like I said, 3 oversight hearings were very, very informative. So thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you, Senator Gumatato. Senator San Agustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And exactly as our colleagues brought up, it started in Jigo. I'm from Jigo. I showed up at the first town hall meeting, and Senator Lujan and I looked at each other and says, Hafa State, what is this? It starts from Jigo? And I'm hearing today, Captain, did you mention you're going to cover the whole island? I'm retired Army for 26 years. You can only do a little bit at a time. You're not going to cover the whole island one time. And I know that for a fact. But if it's in Jigo, then figure out what the issue is in Jigo and move on. Because then you cover the island. Because when you hit Jigo, you cover Anderson. It's the tip of the island, then work your way down. And my concern really, I'm really worried. I'm more concerned of, if it started in Jigo, I'm concerned about GWA. I know you guys do the testing. I know that EPA gets involved, but there's got to be a level where do the test, EPA, do the response. Whatever's out there, report it, let the people of Guam know. Doesn't matter if it's something to be reported or it needs to be recognized, just report it out. Just say it. Because the people of Guam will adjust. And when they need to adjust, they'll do what they need to do. And when you mentioned some of the stores, I guess, that were closed, would that mean in Jigo and Mangilao? Yes, no? Mainly in Jigo, right? Yeah, I buy my water in Jigo too, other than pay GWA for water. And that's what concerned me, because many of us in Jigo and many folks from Anderson come out to buy water. And a lot of folks from there do come up to Jigo to buy water. And when, and I looked at the breakdown, now we got Deritu. We moved from Jigo to cover Mangilao, and then we're in Deritu. Just take a look at that whole picture. And you're going to tell me about you're going to cover the whole island? Cover that part first. Settle this, because you won't know where it's going to go. Direction is going to be very simple. If it begins in the north, it'll end in the south. And if it starts in the south, it'll end in the north. It's only one way to go. And with that, I'm just hoping for the best. And I just ask that more information be put out. GWA, don't hesitate, just spit it out. The truth will protect you from all the insults that you could receive tomorrow. Don't hide from it, because EPA gets all the blame for everything. But once they start spitting it out, everybody's saying, oops, we told you, you didn't respond. And all I'm saying is just let it out. Public health, just do what you need to do. And then we can move forward from there. And I'm going to assume that the Vice Speaker's in charge. Thank you. And thank you, folks, for coming out today. And just do what you do best. Everything will work its way. The people of Guam just want to know. That's all it is. Just want to know. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Senator?
Thank you, Senator San Agustin. And the chairman wanted me to recognize Mr. Jeremy Regis. I believe he wanted you to come up wanted to present, right? Just state your name for the record, and then you can proceed with your presentation.
Yeah. Jeremy Regis, representing AWG Micronesia. We're a company that actually does distribution of heavy-duty equipment and also atmospheric water generators. And I come here to actually testify to actually show you if I can actually get them to actually play how my system actually works. And this is a cleaner solution. Get it? But so with this, it goes about where this machine actually produces water gathered from the surrounding humidity. Where it runs it through a 7-stage reverse osmosis and UV treatment process to actually give clean, drinkable, potable water for residents to actually consume without having to connect to a water source such as GWA. But with this, I'm not here to testify to push so much of the business, but more to improve the quality of Guam's water by pulling directly from the atmosphere. And with the machines, it's a cleaner way instead of having to use I believe it's the biochar filters, where, like you said, we don't know where the Dieldrin is actually going to be trailed, because with the infrastructure that we have right now, it's still in the unknown, because there's still a lot of things that need to be implemented, such as backflow preventers to make sure that Dieldrin doesn't seep into other parts of other residences and spread forth. But if we could actually take a look at how the machine works with the atmospheric water generator, it provides an alternative to actually improve GWA's water quality for the residents of Guam. And I believe if you guys could take a look at the water.
Did you know? At any one time, there is actually more water vapor in the atmosphere than in all the rivers and streams on the planet combined. And this water vapor is infinitely more pure and clean than traditional ground or surface water. Needing only a simple electrical outlet or a renewable energy source, Skywell pulls in ambient air through a high-efficiency air filtration chamber and then across a cold coil. When the air is moved across the cold surface, it no longer is able to hold on to its moisture, causing water droplets to fall into the lower collection tank. As the water drops collect in the lower tank, they get exposed to ultraviolet light, providing high-level disinfection before moving through multiple stage filtration stages on the way to the top tank. Once there, it gets exposed to additional UV and activated oxygen treatment. After going through the proprietary Skywell purification process, fresh, pure water, hot or cold, is ready to be dispensed. No pipes and no plastic bottles.
Yeah. So with this system, I was looking at possibly presenting it so as an alternative to the Dieldrin problem, and also an additive to the infrastructure of GWA to improve the quality of pretty much the island's water. And it's a lot cleaner pulling from the atmosphere than pumping from what we don't know was in our soil or our aquifer. So when it comes down to it, I feel a little bit more safe pulling from our atmosphere. And especially with these machines, you're looking at the relative humidity to actually run these at full operational is at the low of 35 to 40% relative humidity. Guam's humidity here on island is usually twice that amount, and it hasn't dropped below 66% relative humidity in a while. So, and at the high, it's roughly about 100%. And if we take this measure to encompass a renewable energy source such as solar and a battery power, we could actually generate water continuously from the surrounding air and inputting it into inlets such as water tanks, like the ones that are being built recently close by the airport. And by implementing this these machines, we could be pumping it directly into the residents, using it those towers as inlets. It's just a small little alternative, and if I would like to actually get a little bit more information too, to give you a better calculated costs, because when it comes down to it, it's also consumption. Seeing how many residents within the area consume X amount of gallons, so we could cater to how much we need to be treating within that area, or how many machines we need to actually implement to come up with a backup plan. But this is just an alternative that I kind of wanted to bring up. And thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you very much, Mr. Regis, for that presentation. And also I want to thank each and every one of you for being with us the past few months, and wish everybody, well, again, a happy new year. Lusamasi to all the participants, of course, not just this oversight hearing, but in this past few months. And as I said earlier, the nomination of Mr. John Cruz is moved to February 23rd, 2026 at 9 a.m. With respect to the Dieldrin contamination in our water, today's continuation of our joint oversight hearing has allowed us to add another critical piece to the puzzle by hearing from, of course, the respective departments and agencies. We've taken a deeper look not only at treatment and regulation, but also at how historical, and we'll be hearing more, hopefully with the submission from JRM, and current land use, pesticide practices, and public health communications intersects with our water resources. What we have heard, not just today, but in the past couple of months, reinforces a simple truth. It's not just a technical problem, it is a community problem. It affects families, schools, businesses, and everyone who turns on the tap expecting clean and safe water. The legislature expects continued collaboration, as I asked the agencies before us as well, to continue the collaboration with the prospective oversight chairs, and to our other partners to ensure that clear, timely, and accurate information is shared with the public. Testing, monitoring, and enforcement are strengthened. Legacy contamination is identified and addressed, and long-term prevention strategies are developed so that we are not back here in 10, 20, 25 years, as Senator Matauta had mentioned, confronting the same issue, right? And to the people of Guam, we hear your concerns. We have heard your concerns. We continue to hear your concerns. We'll not let this matter fade into the background. We will continue to follow up and demand transparency, and to ensure that your government remains focused on protecting your health, your families, and your future. And that being said, again, please continue the collaboration with your prospective oversight chairs. And if it's deemed necessary again in the future to conduct an oversight, a joint oversight, we will do so. With that being said, we're going to call this on behalf of the Committees on Tourism, Transportation, Utilities, Customs and Quarantine, Federal and Foreign Affairs, and the Committee of Land, Environment, Housing, Agriculture, Parks and Infrastructure, and the Committee on Health and Veterans Affairs. We will adjourn this oversight hearing. With that, thank you again. God bless, and Happy New Year to everybody again. It's adjourned. It is now 3:57 p.m. Thank you.